Good to see you.
Good evening, everyone. Ooh, welcome, welcome. I would like to call the meeting to order and acknowledge that the Tumwater School District sits on the ancestral land of the Nisqually, Squaxin Island, and Chehalis people. I thank these caretakers of the land who've lived on and continue to live on the land since time immemorial. Please rise as I lead us in the flag salute.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Superintendent Bogatin, have there been any changes or additions to the agenda since it was published?
No changes.
All right. All those in favor of approving the agenda, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Agenda is approved as presented. We'll now move on to meeting minutes review. The meetings from the November 7th meeting have been distributed to the board. Are there any changes or corrections? Hearing none. All those in favor of approving the minutes, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Minutes are approved. We'll now move on to the consent agenda. Items on the consent agenda have been provided to the board. Are there any questions or discussion? No. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
And opposed, nay. The consent agenda is approved. All right. Next, per policy 1210, annual organizational meeting, election of officers, we will now elect from us, the board, a president, vice president, and legislative rep. And we're going to begin with president. So I will now accept nominations for the role of board president.
So I nominate Melissa Beard as our president.
Okay. I accept the nomination of Melissa Beard for the role of president. Are there any other nominations? I have to say once. Okay. All those in favor of Melissa Beard serving in the role of board president, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. All right, motion has passed, and Melissa Beard will serve in the role of board president until December 2025, starting now.
Thank you, sir, for your service. Past board member President Heikkinen. I will now accept nominations for the role of board vice president.
I nominate Casey Taylor for the role of board vice president.
Second.
Are there any other nominations? I think I have to ask 3 times. Are there any other nominations? All those in favor of Casey Taylor serving as the board vice president, please say aye.
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 All those opposed? Motion passes, and Casey Taylor will serve in the role of board vice president until December 2025. I will now accept nominations for the role of legislative representative.
I nominate Jill Adams for the role of legislative representative.
I second.
Are there any other nominations? Any other nominations? All right, all those in favor of Jill Adams serving in the role of legislative representative, please say aye.
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 All those opposed? Motion passes, and Jill Adams will serve in the role of legislative representative starting in July 2025 for 2 years, which means I stuck with it until then. So,
It's quick now.
per policy, she doesn't start till July. Thank you, everyone. So now we'll have student reports. We have a new person that's joining us, Josh Morgan. We won't make him go first. It sounds like Cody is going to be going first.
Good evening. This month's topic is school safety. What is the comfort level in reporting safety concerns, and are there areas for improvement? At Cascadia High School, students feel very comfortable reporting safety concerns because our teachers put in the extra effort to build respectful relationships with students. Most students who attend Cascadia High School consider one or more school staff members to be trusted adults based on peer conversations regarding emotional well-being and the annual Panorama Survey. One of the most impactful differences I've noticed between attending high school at Black Hills and Cascadia is that at Cascadia, I feel supported no matter how big or small the task. I can confidently suggest that emotional health awareness and healthy staff-student relationships are key elements of a safe and welcoming school environment. There is little room for improvement at Cascadia High School regarding this topic. Thank you.
Thank you, Cody. Emma?
So with the data given with me, a lot of students said that they were comfortable reporting to admin and teachers because of the relationships that they have built. And it has also helped that this year we also got another campus security person that is a woman. Now we have one that is a guy and a woman. Last year we did not have one that was a woman, so we were taking away from teachers' time, admin's time, because there was stuff going on in the bathroom, and we were taking away from that time in the classrooms or when admin was needed help. So it's really helped having her this year, and that's about all.
Thank you. Josh?
I would just like to report the same thing as the other board reps. The relationships that the students have with their teachers make them feel really comfortable, and there is not much room for improvement at Tumwater High School as far as safety is concerned.
Does anyone on the board have questions for our students? I had one question, Emma and Josh. So Cody talked about the Panorama Survey. Do you guys remember taking the Panorama Survey, or do they?
Yes.
Yes? Okay, just curious. Anything else?
So I have one question.
Use your microphone.
Oh, I'm sorry. I have one question. So as I understand it, Black Hills High School is a closed campus, but Tumwater High is an open campus. Does that make a difference for safety, feelings of safety, or how do you feel about the differences?
I don't feel like there's much of a difference, safety-wise.
Open in terms of Black Hills has gates all around it.
Is that okay?
And
The-
in other language, open
Open
campus
access.
means students can just leave and go during lunch. But in this case, you're meaning Black Hills has gates around it. Tumwater High School, anyone can just walk onto campus, and it's open in that way. Cody?
I just wanted to add on to that I remember when I went to Black Hills, I felt a lot more unsafe, and it is a gated campus. So I really think it's the teachers' attitude towards the students. I don't think it has to do with if it's an open campus or a closed campus. I think it's all how the staff treat the students, really.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you, students. We'll now move on to public comment. I would like to remind members of the public that if you wished to have addressed the board during public comment portion of this meeting, you would have needed to fill out the public comment form available on the district website by noon today. If you missed this opportunity, you are welcome to sign up for the next regular board meeting or email your comments to the board and/or superintendent. Contact information is on the website. Becky, did we receive any submissions? Is Nikki here? Oh. Okay. All right. Thank you. Now we'll move on to reports to the board. Megan Dawson, Assistant Superintendent, will now introduce performance. In fact, who will present a strategic plan overview and update.
Megan, are they going to be ready for us right now?
Maybe go to Zach.
Do you want to start with Zach, and then we can come
Yeah.
and
Sure.
and then they may have to wait just a little bit? Is that?
Zach, you're up. Zach, Tumwater High School principal, will present the THS 24-25 school improvement plan.
Check, check, check. We there? All right. I'm going to have to lean over on this. Okay, first of all, thank you for the opportunity. Student reps, awesome. Josh, again, nice to see a nameplate in front of you. Board members, Superintendent Bogatin. This is actually a really nice time to be able to present about the state of Tumwater High School. December, we're over a third of the way through school, almost to the halfway point, and some of the stuff that I'm going to share with you is going to be data relative to how our start of school initiatives have taken traction. And so I think a common theme that you're going to hear from me is promising and positive. And so there's lots to point to that is indicative of a nice trajectory that we're on at this time of year. Let's see. So let's get to it here. Our school improvement plan, ABCs, attendance, behavior, course performance, and social emotional learning. I'm just going to real briefly outline those for you. Attendance, whoa, that's not coming through quite right, but that's okay. It'll be fine. Everything's fine. So our attendance is run mostly by our assistant principals, our attendance secretary, our registrars, and our student support team, which includes counselors and grad specialists. We have a goal of a 92% daily attendance. And so if you take all the approximately 6,000 data points, 1,000-ish kids, 6 periods a day, each one of those is a data point, we want to show that 92% of that is in class. I do need to shout out the work that our assistant principals do on this front, because attendance, as you might know, is one of the widest, most diverse and challenging places to move the needle. And because it's tied to all sorts of things. It's tied to mental health, it's tied to families, it's tied to you name it, apathy, motivation, student investment, all of that is wrapped up in attendance. And so it's really challenging to move the needle, and they've done a great job on this through some of these efforts. They meet weekly. There's a tiered intervention that I'll explain in a later slide. We're on top of our attendance letters homes. In fact, I talked with Terry Turner, and she had lots of positive things to say about how we're handling our efforts relative to attendance. 13 days, I pulled 13 days from homeroom dashboard, and the average we're sitting at right now is just below our goal, 90.8%. That does not include the day before Thanksgiving, which it's an outlier. That was an outlier. Let's move on. Behavior. So I've taken the lead on this, obviously with the help of my assistant principals and student support team. The two areas that we're focusing on, and you'll see this theme through the next 3 areas, are our device management process. So that was a huge initiative coming into the school year. I'm going to share some data on that, and using panorama surveys, specific questions on that to help us get a bead on whether or not this is making a difference in terms of engagement. And I think, again, the data is going to say that it's pretty promising. Wrapped also into that is, as we have peeled away devices as a barrier to engagement, there's left a little bit of a void there that has allowed us to lean into instructional practice, right? If kids are not on their devices, now what? Now, that opens the door for an instructional focus, and I'll share a slide about how we've gone about that as well. There has been overwhelmingly positive responses from a lot of various stakeholders. I was going to bring a note from a parent that wrote me moments after her own student received an infraction, and was also, again, fully supportive of our effort on this front. I believe students in general are feeling positive about this, and staff absolutely are feeling much more effective in their work now that the barrier of devices has, we've removed that barrier. Course performance, that's everybody. This is the primary purpose of school. We're here to learn, and so that involves everybody that shows up at Tumwater High School. I'll show you a breakdown of some data on this front, but the goal is 90% of students passing all classes at grade level, and also those receiving special services. So those are the 5 subgroups that we're tracking data on and built into our SIP. I have a really exciting tiered intervention canvassing slide I'll get to in a moment. And as part of this, our MTSS work revolves around when we pool data. So that we've scheduled very, timed out dates over the course of the year to what, it's not weekly, but it's about every 2 to 3 weeks where we pull data, we analyze, we track, we look at our numbers. I use that data to share out to our various intervention folks, case managers, grad specialists, teachers, all that I will share in a moment here. But again, performance also is tied to like the level of instruction that they're receiving in the classroom. And so can't say it enough, as we have moved past or hopefully gotten some good traction with our device management, we can really lean into what instruction looks like in the classroom. We have a 9th grade success team. They met on Tuesday, and I can say that it is nothing short of inspiring, the work that they're doing. It's data-driven. They're looking at specific kids, specific areas of struggle, and have a plan for intervention in the 3 weeks that after break leading up to the end of the semester. So that's a really strong team led by Marty Reed, our assistant principal, and a team of 8-ish 9th grade teachers. So again, progress, promising this time of year. Our social emotional goal was developed by our THS site team. Obviously, principals and assistant principals worked on that. We are focusing on some specific questions off the Panorama survey relative to student self-efficacy and effort. And again, our students seeing themselves as doers of the work. Do they see themselves as able? Are they coupling the notion that if I put in the effort, then I can be successful at this, right? So not to get too deep into that, but there are Panorama survey questions around that we're tracking. And some of the ways that we're going about this, again, our 9th grade success team, instructional focus, which I'll talk more about, is weave through all of this devices. Also feeling like that we're having some promising data come back relative to SEL. We won't know all of this until spring Panorama survey, right? This is the measure that we are using to gauge progress. Okay, let's keep going. So there's lots of numbers up here. I'm not expecting everybody to like fully dig in, but basically what we're looking at is how many infractions, device infractions, as we've tracked on a weekly basis. That first week, 923, that 67 in the upper left-hand corner represents 67 infractions that came in to the front office in the first 8 days of school. Okay, well, excuse me, the first 8 days that we started the infraction process. There was a grace period, a week-long grace period with lots of teaching, okay? There was 67 infractions by, at the very right side, 60 students. So some of those kids were doubled up in that first week. What you'll notice is we ran the gauntlet of October. And for those of you that have been in schools and maybe have experienced a device management initiative at the start of school, October is the litmus test. If you can run the gauntlet of October and still see that, it's still there, that results are improving, that's where you get the sense that the traction, the initiative is taking root and isn't going away. So, you'll see we went from 67 in that first week, and we're now continuing to average in the teens in terms of infractions. So there's 235 total late November, 192 students encompassing 192 students. And so I think that feels like a big number, but I would also say that that means that there's about 880-ish kids that are doing exactly what they should be doing, following the expectations, or at least not getting caught yet, right? So I think, this points to, I think, again, that this is taking root and there's some positive and promising aspects of a change in our culture, which is device-free. Okay, so let's talk about instructional focus. If they are not on their devices, it is really beholden to the teacher to engage. And I've heard this a few times from a few teachers. They haven't hit their smooth yet, is what I've heard. Because, teaching and holding a student's attention for 55 minutes a day is challenging, right? And so what are we doing? This was developed as part of, Lisa and I kind of brought it to our site team and talked about it with them then, but just providing students the opportunity in every period at some point through that period to write and or talk about their learning. Okay, we know that the people that are doing the writing and talking are the people that are doing the thinking. Okay, I'm doing a lot of thinking right now. So if we flip the paradigm of teacher download to student and student receives instruction or receives the information, and we flip that paradigm slightly and ask them to write and think and talk about their learning, it's a little bit of a paradigm shift here, but that increases engagement. I'll just point to a few of these things that are going on. They're very actually simple instructional strategies: turn and talk, write, pair, share, think, pair, share. Josh, you may have heard some of these things in your classes. Kagan strategies has been something that Kagan has been around for a long time. It's also something that our math science team is digging into through the MBLC grant. And so there's some really cool practices that involve, again, structured opportunities for students to write and talk about their learning. It opens the door for student voice and student choice. So as they're talking and as they're sharing their thinking, the instructor is going around the room and picking up all the ideas, and that helps drive the instruction, knowing where the starting points are. Again, this was mentioned earlier, but the hope is students see themselves as invested in the work. They see themselves as doers of the work and tying the effort they put into the success they have in the classroom. Okay? There's still some work to do on this front in terms of delivering this and pushing this with teachers. We needed to get over the hurdle of devices first before we could really have some meaningful work done on this front. This is something that is named in the SIP plan. It's a continuum of engagement, which we won't spend a ton of time on it, but the idea that, as you move to active engagement, you're seeing things like seeking feedback from others, right? Self-assessing and monitoring their own progress, teaching others. So that active engagement is as we, again, provide students opportunity to think and write and talk about their learning, we'll see more strategies pushed to the right side of this, that active engagement. Okay, this is my favorite slide of all. Our tiered intervention canvassing. So what you're looking at is our first data pool on October 7th. And we're now a month into school, okay? In 9th grade, there were 45 students that at that point were failing one class. And then you can go from there, right? We had one student that at that point was failing 5 of their 6 classes. We had 288 students at that point that across all grades were failing at least one class. This feels like a lot, right? We're looking at this and you're like, oh my goodness, what is going on? I would say that this is probably typical of the start of October, okay? Here's how we've canvassed this. Tier 1, there's 253 students there on the 1 and 2F list. If a student is failing one class, this would in general terms mean that this student has some studenting ability. Like it's not a, they're passing 5 of their 6 classes. It is maybe a content area, one specific class. I would say that math is probably the highest, the most, if a student is failing one class, it is more likely that it is a math class, okay? So what we do is we pull this data, and through some Google Sheet magic, we kick this out to teachers, and they a day or two after receive their 1 and 2F lists. So they now have in front of them their own sheet with their own students that are a 1 or 2F student, and so this just brings it to the forefront of their mind. They don't have to go digging through Skyward to figure out how many classes are failing, what they're doing. It's right there. You spend some extra attention in maybe getting this kid to T-Bird time. They're passing 5 of their other classes. It's pretty important that they be with you. So just getting that information out to get awareness to teachers that this is a tier 1 thing. This is a classroom level intervention. I included 2s, although some of those 2s maybe are in need of some additional supports. You'll see how that gets canvassed in a moment. A 9th grade success team. Again, really proud of the work that this team is doing. They get their list of 1s, 2s, and 3s. And so there's some overlap there. But I can talk for a little bit about that, but they, giving them some awareness about the number of kids that are failing 1, 2, or 3 classes and letting them cook. We have grad specialists. We have 3 grad specialists. Their case load at that point is 10 through 12, failing 2 or 3. So some overlap there. After October 7th, they get their sheet, 69 students. It's got notes, it's got follow-up. This is who you need to be checking in with. You need to go after these 69 students, okay? Tier 3. So at this point, if a student is failing 3 or more, this is where our admin, counselor, student support team comes in. And we're now narrowed down to 12 kids. We very likely at that point know their stories. They very likely have showed up on the attendance radar. But the work that we do with admin and counselors and SST, student support team, looks a little bit different. It is not a whole group meeting. It is a lot of small calendared meetings with relevant people at the table. Okay, so that might be a grad specialist, a counselor, and an assistant principal. They'll meet regularly to talk through their caseloads. Okay, so this is our tiered, like our MTSS, if you could say, tiered canvassing. This is how we go after students that need support. The data from this, again, is October 7th. That was our first data pool. Here's our numbers. Not super great. 74% of 9th graders were passing all classes, and so on and so forth. If you take a look at the 2nd grade data pool, 3 weeks later, after we've had a chance to let our MTSS work, right? Look at that. And this, I would say, in the 3 weeks of October is not typical to what we had experienced in the past. Generally, October, we see things get worse. It's the grind. The grind is on. The days are long. I think there's a span of full weeks there leading up to a November break, but really the grind is on in October, and so to see things improve, 12th grade, there was a small dip there, but a 10% increase in our SPED rates. This to me is the positive and promising of what's going on right now in terms of academic and course performance. It's holding tight. Quarter 3, again, 2 or 3 weeks later, we're looking at data that is still pretty positive. I'll back one up. It's a little dip in SPED there, but it's holding tight. And I will say that if we can hold this as a baseline through October and November, there is always an uptick leading up to the end of the semester. So if our baseline is at 80s, 70s and 80%, that 90% mark by the time we get to semester is very achievable. If we're working in the 60s and 70s throughout October or worse, it makes that run to the end of semester much more critical. So it's nice to see that the baseline is ticked up. Yeah, Jill.
So I noticed on your figures on the prior slide and also this one that seems like 10th grade is quite a challenge.
Yeah.
Is there a reason for that, you guys know, or do you know?
Historically, I mean, the sophomore slump is a thing, right? I would say that the course load increases. They lose an elective. They add a core class. They add a social studies class. The burgeoning sense of independence of a sophomore, thinking about getting their license and branching out and really growing up. I think there's some merit to that as well. But really, I think that it is one of the harder years, I would say, over the course of the 4. It's the second lap in the mile run. The end isn't there yet, right? You can't see the finish line. You're past the first lap where your adrenaline's running out and you're still seeing that there's a long road in front of you. So there's something to the sophomore slump. Yeah, but I'd be happy to hear how some of our student reps feel about that.
Is your presentation finished?
No, I still have a few, like 4 or T. No, I mean, we can come back to it, I guess. Yeah, great. Okay, I'll keep rolling. I only have a few more slides. Okay, so SBA trend data. This has actually been real easy to pull through our homeroom dashboard, and it was mentioned, I think, in a previous presentation, so I wanted to include it here. Lots of numbers here. I can point to a general trend in our math, so that's nice to see that we have an increasing meeting or exceeding standard percentage there. But I would also say, we haven't done any real intentional intervention around SBA data. There are interim assessments out there that some of more so our English folks will do. But what I'm hopeful for is that improved practice and experience in the classroom, minimizing distractions, increasing engagement is going to show up in our SBA data. Okay, so I'm really I'm excited to see how our 10th graders perform in the spring and compare it. If it's anything like the grade data, which I hope it is, we'll see some bumps there. Okay, so that's the data that I wanted to bring to the board that covered some of our SIP. I'll take some questions or some comments. Before I sign off, I'll just real quickly mention that the culture of Tumwater High School, I would say, is still very positive and strong. There's a ton of investment that I feel like our staff put into our school, and they really show up big for students. If I can get out of my office and go around, it does not take long to see some of the cool things that happen. Pancake Friday. Today there was an elf on a shelf. There was Santa showed up for our success-oriented PE folks, and we served some hot cocoa. This is our RISE program. Our RISE students came up and visited Santa. It's in the hallways. It's it does not take long, and I cannot. I'm very grateful for the folks that show up big for Tumwater High School, and I would say, generally speaking. And there is some quantifiable staff panorama survey data to support this, but generally speaking, I think our staff are feeling a sense of being effective in their work, which is leading to high levels of just plain job satisfaction. Our staff are rallying around a really cool place for a good reason, and I hope we see it more in our data. Okay, I'm done with my presentation. Thank you.
Does anyone have any questions? Darby.
Hey.
Hi. All right, so just like with every other presentation before, I'm going to bring it back to our board goals. So a few months ago, we adopted a set of goals, one of which student learning goals for the district, one of which is the board will hold the school district accountable for regular reports of school improvement plans aligned to the student learning goals established in our resolution 92324. And in that resolution, we have two primary goals. One is that all students in all subgroups will have 90% graduation rate. And the other is that 90% of all students in all subgroups will show proficiency on ELA and math. So the expectation of the board to the district is that through these school improvement plans, there's a definitive link between the actions and strategies that are touching on those. And so for Tumwater High School, I heard some things in your presentation that kind of speak to the graduation goal, the ninth grade focus, the credits, the grad specialists, things like that. Tumwater has done, well, all of Tumwater School District, but high school does very well. I mean, we had 95% graduation rate. But one of the things that is called out specifically in our student learning goals around the strategy is essentially how we expect to get here is we're going to have to put resources towards those groups that are showing the largest gap in gain. Students with disabilities is kind of the big one across the board. So 72% graduation rate for students with disabilities. So there's clearly some work to do there. On the ELA and math, again, the expectation is that we don't just look at the data at the school level, but it needs to be broken down by all of these groups and specifically the populations that we focused on. And that 39% math attainment rate is a little
dismal.
troubling. And
Yeah.
when we break down the groups even further, just like I've done in every presentation, scan it through the report card. Our black students, 40% ELA, less than 30% math. Students with disabilities, 18% ELA, 7.9% attainment in math. So I am hoping that you can speak to a little bit more in terms of what might be the intentional strategic focus to those 10th graders, as you mentioned.
Yeah. So let me start with thank you. And I don't know the SBA data maybe as well as I need to. I need to pick that apart a little bit more. It has not, it's not represented in our SIP this year. And if that's a change that we need to make for next year, like I'm happy to go there. So relative to students receiving special services, this is now my second year overseeing the SPED department, and there is some work to do there. One of the three focuses that I've had for our SPED team from day one, know your students. So I should be able to, we walk into your room, ask you about a student on your case manager, and the student that you case manage, and you could tell me their story, what they're failing, why they're failing, what their struggle is, what's going on with them. So know your kids, connect with teachers. So we have a little bit of an anomaly this year in that our caseloads are high, but our LREs are low. So in other words, students that are receiving special services.
Less restrictive.
Yep, thank you.
Less restrictive environment.
Less restrictive environment is low. And so in other words, while they're on a SPED caseload, they're spending a lot of time in the general ed population, or general ed classes, okay? So when that happens and a student is failing a gen ed class, like the case manager, the teacher, and the student that needs to be triangulated. They need to work together, they need to collaborate, and SPED is the only department that has been asked to cross all the different contents and collaborate with all the different content areas. Math rarely will be asked to collaborate with a PE teacher or an English teacher, right? But SPED, that is their task this year, is to get out of their rooms, get into classes, connect with teachers. Emails come across as tasks to teachers. Conversations very different. So what I'm seeing is, as this ask of getting case managers and teachers to collaborate, we're seeing increased participation in IEPs. So teachers are more likely to come to an IEP if it's something more than an invitation, an email invitation. Okay, they are more likely to lean into the conversation with a case manager when they're feeling that support happen in their classroom. Okay, so the three things, back to the three things: know your kid, get out and connect with teachers, and then the third thing was to track their data. So they right now have an intervention period. It's in addition to a prep period, and so during that time, it's, they need to be tracking that and figuring out who they're working with, what they're working with them on. If I go back to the tiered canvassing, there's, on those data pool dates, that data gets shared with case managers as well. So they, it's out there. It's for them to see. I can track who and how many. And I'm on my third round of weekly meetings with our case managers where I just, I said an hour, tell me about these three things. Tell me about this kid. We pick one off the list. What's the story here? And so I've done probably more so in year 2 of principaling with our SPED, having just improved my capacity and understanding. Anything SPED related is, it can get real complicated real quick. And so, so relative to special students receiving special services, that's been an intentional area of focus, which is why I built it into the SIP. I'm not seeing, we saw a little bit of a dip in our most recent, our Q1 data pool, and I'm hopeful that on the other side of semester that'll be different. You mentioned some of the other groups. You said 40 and 30 for, I would say Black
African American students.
Black African American, yeah. So there, aside from a general school-wide initiative around giving students voice and choice in the classroom and giving them the opportunity to write and think and talk about their learning, all students are included in that. And I think, that's the basis of, if you're growing and adjusting your instruction based off of the thinking in the room, not the delivery of what the teacher knows, but if you're basing what you're doing in the classroom based off of the thinking in the room, that is culturally responsive. That's culturally responsive. You're meeting kids in their space of learning, understanding what they know, how they're making sense of something, and then you're making your teacher moves to push the learning forward. And so, again, I really am hopeful that come SBA, some of the removing the device and improving our instructional practices, specifically around giving kids, building self-efficacy, attaching the notion that effort leads to improved performance. I think we're going to see, I'm really hopeful that we're going to see a positive bump in our SBA scores. So,
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
So I have one question.
Yes, Jill.
So on the math performance with the state exams, what can the district do to assist Tumwater High and also Black Hills and Cascadia, to have the students have the chance to perform better? What do you see as things, and you don't have to answer it now, but I'm wondering if that's something you could convey to Kevin or something like that, of, because as I understand it, the curriculum for the math is pretty new. So we must have some kind of a gap in our ability to teach the kids so that they can perform better on the math exam specifically. As I understand it, right now, we're working on English language arts, adopting a new curriculum. So I don't want to, be too critical, but, what would we learn from the math adoption that we can apply to the English language arts adoption? And I guess, as I say, as a district, what can we do to help you guys, to help the kids?
In my mind, it continues to come back to the experience that a student is having in a math classroom. And so curriculum, as a former math teacher, I taught math for 15 years, right? And I lived through the Holt to MVP transition, adoption. MVP Math Vision project is now open resources, or open up resources, excuse me. And so that went through its own change, but this is largely the same curriculum. And it does not, I would say that what matters more is like the experience that the student is having in the classroom. It doesn't matter if I put a Holt book in the classroom or I put an open up resource, whatever it is, the engagement that student has in the material, how they're making sense of it, how the teacher's adjusting and moving, and in the moment changes.
So it'd be
changes the outcome.
Engagement, helping the
Yeah,
kids to be able to
absolutely.
engage in the specifics.
Yeah. Curriculum, I think there is a call to relook at our math curriculum. I don't know where that falls in the scope of curriculum adoptions across the district. And I would say that, what we have right now may not be everybody's preferred, but as we focus on instruction and like structured Kagan strategies are part of that our math team has been digging into. Like that's the bang for the buck is the instruction.
We've talked about this, I think, Emma and our student reps brought up a good point a couple weeks ago or a couple months ago around our kids not taking this seriously. And I think we've had some of those conversations around that this data does not reflect actual performance of our students. So I think, that's an ongoing conversation around, and that they don't get this result, we don't get the official results until a year after. So we have to talk about how, if we, again, it's an important measure somewhat, and I think we need to figure out how to get our students to take that a little more seriously, and whether it's, I think one of the suggestions was, can this be either, maybe it's part of our, a grade for our students that are in, and I know it's only one grade level that takes this, so it's 11th grade. So in some ways, can we make sure that our kids are at least taking it serious? And I think, so that's an ongoing conversation that I don't think we've engaged quite with our high school administration in that seriously, but it's an ongoing conversation.
Yeah, they don't have to pass this, right? It is, it'll make us look good. It is one option. Passing it is one option as a pathway, but there are multiple pathways that don't include passing the SBA. It was the WASL when I took it, or when I administered it, and the day before, literally the day before we took the test, there was a decoupling of the performance and graduation, and that just dropped the bottom. It hasn't been the same since. So, but I do hope that our sophomores want to make us look good. And
all on Josh.
And we do invest time, energy, and effort an entire week restructuring our bell schedules, trying to accommodate as best possible for what's going to be the best possible scenario that's going to get you across, or be able to perform your best. And even then, it's click on through. So
It does help us to squeeze more money out of the state.
Oh,
The better the performance.
I like that. Yeah.
Cody?
Any other questions?
Cody?
So, from my understanding, what I got from the special education kind of talk was that to improve grades for them, like the students that need special education, we're going to mix them with general education.
Their schedules are already like students that receive special services have goal areas, and sometimes those goal areas they're not in specific content areas, so they'll receive their least restrictive environment is in a gen ed setting. So it is not a strategy, I would say. It is a compliance. It's compliance to an IEP. Yeah.
Maybe, I don't know. I just personally think that it is not a very great idea because students that need special education are there to get special education. They're not there to get general education. That's why they need it,
Yeah.
And I know from experience with family members that have disabilities in Tumwater schools have been forced to go to gen ed, and they are tragically have PTSD from it every single day because they have an immune disability. That's how autism works sometimes, and it just seems like it's a disaster waiting to happen, and it's not going to help students at all with severe disabilities, but that's just my opinion.
Yeah, and it's a compliance piece, right? It's about special SDI minutes, specially designed instruction minutes, and as much possible, we want to keep our students with their cohort, with their peers. Yeah.
I strongly disagree with that, but thank you.
Yeah. Fair.
Any other questions? I have a question. So I was glad to see the chart, the Hattie chart. Like, what are we doing to support teachers to adjust their teaching for student voice? It brings me joy. That there's this opportunity. I didn't realize it would happen because of the device-free stuff. So I'm really glad. But are our teachers prepared to be able to change things up based on what they're hearing from students? And what have we done to prepare them for that?
Sure. I think I mentioned that it was a nice surprise to see that the opportunity to lean into instruction. I think, there was always a little bit of a barrier to getting into that conversation without the system support of device management. Okay, so the system support, we have a strong culture. We're there to show up for kids. We have systems that support a strong culture, and so now the lightning bolt goes to learning. And so, the ways that this happens are through my building leadership teams to start. It's site team. We talked about it just today. It's our program managers and our program PLC leaders. Right now, it's gentle and consistent. I think swinging for the fences in terms of instruction is not the best in strategy, but it is an area where, again, a third of the way into the school year, getting into the halfway, we're starting to lean more into that conversation. Do I have 100%? I don't have a full plan yet. Again, back to monitoring and adjusting depending on what comes my way. But I do think that we're primed for this conversation. I think our teachers are ready for it. I think I've seen veteran teachers engaging in talking about specifically Kagan strategies that typically I don't think would have, and so they're going there. They're going there, and I'm gonna let them continue to explore, and then generally speaking, my tact is gentle and consistent as we move through this. So, but I think they're ready.
Great.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you. Anyone else? Questions? Gosh, thank you. You were on the hot seat for quite a while, Zach.
Yeah, you bet. Hey, my pleasure. Again, thanks for giving me the opportunity. There's lots of positive and promising things, and I'm grateful for where I'm at. Yeah.
We're glad to have you. Thank you.
Thanks. Okay, thanks.
So Megan, are people on Zoom available now?
Yes.
All right. So now, back. Megan Dawson, Assistant Superintendent, will now introduce Performance Fact, who will present a strategic plan overview and update.
Yes, I will. Thank you. So I am pleased to announce that we're well on our way of our strategic planning. It'll be a one-year process through the 24-25 school year, and it will help set our goals and vision for the next 5 years. And I know this is also a goal of the school board, so this is an exciting initiative. It will be crucial for shaping the future of our district. And given our current budget challenges, which we'll hear about soon, this plan is even more vital. It will help us prioritize our spending and focus our vision on the most important cornerstones of our work as educators and as an overall district. You will see that we've launched a new strategic planning portal on our web page, and we are wanting full community engagement, transparency, and accessibility for all stakeholders. So, for example, everybody in this room, you'll be getting the open line communication, which gives an invite to the core planning team. We'll also have student voices sessions at both middle schools and both high schools. We'll have a instructional focus team that is sent out to all instructional staff. And then our community and family links will be going out next week. Some of the events that happen in January is January 7th is our student voice focus groups. January 21st and 22nd is our kickoff meeting with our core planning team. And you'll see there in the memo some of the other dates. There's about 35 events that will happen between now and April, mid-April. And beyond, so for the school board, beyond just the scheduled school board sessions, you're also invited to participate by signing up for one of the following planning teams: the core planning team, the instructional focus team, or the alignment leadership team. And also all of our students who are on the school board. All 6 of the students are encouraged to sign up for one of those. So you should have received a packet that looks like this. And Mutu is our Performance Fact leader. He's going to introduce himself and just kind of take us through these slides. And we'll kind of bounce back and forth as we present the steps of our strategic planning process. Thank you, Mutu.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Can you hear me so far?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Are you used to the accent already? I'd like to begin by just saying a few words about my own background. You've picked up an accent in my voice. Kevin, do you mind being my barometer if they can't hear me or if I need to speed up or slow down? Just give me one finger. I mean, 2 fingers, not 1 finger.
Okay.
The accent is from Nigeria. I've actually been in the U.S. for about 50 years now. So, for all practical purposes, I've been in the country for a long time, much longer than the number of years I spent in Nigeria. I came to the U.S. to go to school. I studied chemical engineering, undergraduate and graduate degrees. Worked for Eastman Kodak as a research scientist back in the 70s and 80s when Kodak was still around, and got interested in teaching hands-on science in one elementary school in Rochester, New York. And that was how what I call my love affair with public education started, just teaching one class of 4th graders 2 hours a week. I decided I wanted to do it full-time, left my Kodak job, and started working full-time in education. So this is my 42nd year working in this field. We're based in Oakland, California right now, but most of our clients are actually outside of the state of California. By far the largest number have been in Pennsylvania and Washington states. One of your neighbor districts, North Thurston, has been a past client of ours. I have a colleague on the screen. She's going to stay off screen, but if she has to answer some questions, okay, she will come on screen also. Listening to, was that Megan that was
Yeah,
presenting?
Megan.
If I come on?
Yes.
Okay, listen to what Megan shared. I'm wondering if you could let me know what would be most useful to you in a few minutes I have with you. What would you like me to touch on? Because she's touched on some of the same points
Yeah.
I was going to present.
Well, the board has the slides. Let's see. I think it's the same slides that you shared, that we actually shared at the work session with them and that you've shared with us and Cabinet. So maybe we just want to take a few questions from the board about any of the process that will be happening, how people will have access to giving their input about the strategic plan. One thing, Mutu, I was going to share with you is that one of the steps that has been so helpful for Kevin and I is how accessible your team is. That even though people are living in different cities and states, when we have a question about the process, we email, contact them, they reach back out. We've been doing Zoom sessions with Kay. Every step of the way, we feel like we're giving input to you about what's special about Tumwater and what we might need in Tumwater, and then you're also giving us strategies and like, hey, here's how we did it in another district, like with this work, and so it's just we felt super supported through this process.
That's correct. That's correct. In fact, maybe if I go quickly through the slides, some of the slides, that might be helpful.
Yeah.
To get going on Megan's question, this blue circle is really very important to us, and that's to put our role in context. We see ourselves as facilitators, and what we do is to guide you towards what makes sense for you. We don't command, we don't control. It wouldn't work anyway, but we do direct. And part of the direction is sharing with you what we've learned from other districts or what we've read about or experienced through research. So it's a role we take very seriously. We don't impose on any of our clients, but we do let you know what we think of what comes out of the process for you. Now, why plan? This is the primary goal in our view, is to get all the arrows going in the same direction. And the arrows includes people also, in people, programs, structures. And there's no doubt that the arrows on the right will be more effective and more productive than the arrows on the left. So at every point, we emphasize making sure we have all the diverse voices of your stakeholders. And the way we do that is through a series of teams, which Megan has shared with you already. The central team, we call it a core planning team. And it generates ideas that radiate outwards. And it also takes feedback from the other groups that are orbiting the core planning team and integrates it to make a plan that's truly local. So one way of thinking of our role is that we are there to align our external perspective with your internal vision for your school district. And it's the intersection of both of those that our clients find very useful. We don't have all the answers for you, but we do have a perspective. And by working collaboratively with you through all of these different team structures, you come up with something that's truly local, something that's unique to you, but also informed by practice and what other districts have done in the past. The calendar you went through, you notice that it spirals. Each one of those teams has multiple opportunities to participate. So it's not, one interaction and then your part is done. The process is also always open. It's never done until it's done, which will be in early April in the case of our Tumwater School District. So there are multiple opportunities. Our preference is to have your default response be yes to anyone who wants to participate, rather than having them pass some test of worthiness. The more people who participate, the better. We don't have any artificial limits on how many participants you can have. Just make it truly open to anyone who wants to be part of it, including some of the folks that maybe get under your skin sometimes. Sometimes those folks have some of the best ideas. Make sure they're part of the process as well. And 2 slides that describe the work. The process really asks 4 questions. What data do we have? what does the data say? Why does the data look that way? And what are we going to do about it? And the what are we going to do about it really comes down to articulating the core recommendations in the strategic plan. There are 3 levels of responses. You can almost think of this as a play in 3 acts. Act 1 focuses on what matters most. That's student learning. And on that circle number 1, we'll talk about things like the portrait of a graduate, mission, vision, and core values, some specific goals around student attainment, and measures of progress towards those goals. So circle number 1 is all about the ends, ENDS. Circles 2 and 3 are about the means to the ends. So kids first, and in our view, the most powerful means to the end is instruction. In other words, the most important person when it comes to getting all kids home successfully will be the teacher or those who support teaching and learning. That's why we elevate circle number 2 to a higher level than circle number 3. Both 2 and 3 are means to the ends, but the most significant one in our view is around instruction, or what teachers do every day. And circle 3 defines other strategies to support circle number 2 and circle number 1. So the order of those 3, it's really very, very key. We want to keep the ends and means in proper sequence. And as you probably have heard already, we, for each one of our clients, we set up a customized website, a Google site for you, where anyone can interact with the information, what's been done, when meetings are coming up, what's work today, the calendar, and so on. So this is specifically designed for the Tumwater project. And that's all I have to present. So I'll be more than happy to take your questions, please, or feedback.
Does anyone have any questions? Thank you for the presentation. I'm really excited. I love the spiraling, and just to make sure that we're hearing, that we're understanding what people are saying and giving them a chance to provide that input again. I also like that we are not going to limit this to just a certain number of people, but we're opening up to anyone. We can't be afraid of people coming and telling us what we need to do. So I see this plan honoring those different voices, and I'm really excited that this will help us with the decisions we have to make in the future.
Thank you much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That was easy.
Thank you so much.
So far.
I look forward to working with you.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, the real work, I mean, that was the easiest part, probably the presentation. The real work comes. So now Megan Dawson, Assistant Superintendent, will present a first reading on our policy 3141, non-resident students.
Yes, and this policy update, in the memo, I have little bulleted points of what changes. So ours was pretty similar to this. It's just that it wasn't exactly aligned to the WASDA model policy. So for example, it didn't explain that we use the standard choice transfer system, which is in EDS, just like most school districts in Washington use. It just numbers the standards in the same order as the WASDA model policy. It removes a standard that just erroneously was listed twice. It removes the history of school attendance standard, which is in alignment with the OSPI issued bulletin from November 28th, 2018. There was also a statement about if parents followed the required procedures for enrollment while previous enrolled standard. That was not in the WASDA model policy. And then it adds designee after superintendent. And then the last sentence just talks about how we notify the resident district and we make necessary arrangements for the transfer of student records. So it's our recommendation that we adopt policy 3141 at our January 23rd board meeting.
Do we have any questions or suggestions for Megan before she brings it back to us? So I read those bullets and I understand what those words mean, but what does that mean in practice? What does it change about what we're currently doing?
The only change that I predict is that we previously would pull students' attendance records and use that in making a decision. And that is not a practice that is recommended by our legal counsel.
Right.
We still screen by discipline records and grades and, you know, just looking at the student overall, like, will they be successful here?
Questions? All right. Gosh, we're taking it easy on everyone. All right. Thank you, Megan. Now, Ben Rarick, Assistant Superintendent, Kara Acker, Director of Financial Services, will present the 23-24 F-196 year-end and October 2024 financial statements.
What's the clicker situation? Good evening, board members. It's my pleasure to present to you the financial results from fiscal year 24, which is now complete and reported to the state. Just to mention, first of all, so what you have in your materials in your packet includes an overview memo. It includes the PowerPoint that we're going to go over. There's also a separate PowerPoint for the October financial statement. We're not going to do another PowerPoint going through those slides, but if you had questions about anything in that presentation, Ms. Acker would come up and address all questions about October. And I'll be focusing just on the year-end information. And I'm sensitive to the fact that you've had a lot of content, so I'm going to move fairly quickly through these slides. The last slide is the most important slide of this presentation, and of course we have the interfund loan item as well, so I anticipate we're going to need to budget our time a little bit. So these are the results for fiscal year 2024. The year closes at the end of August. We report by October 25th, and then it goes through a certification process with OSPI that typically culminates in the month of November. And so quickly, we're going to do a summary of all 5 funds, and then we're going to spend a few slides looking into some detail just for the general fund. And then we've got some slides on enrollment, staffing, and payroll. Here's some helpful fast facts if you just wanted to have a sheet that was sort of like a data profile of the finances of the Tumwater School District. We're at $134 million of total expenditure, 114 of which is in the general fund, the remaining 20 being in the other funds. Total enrollment, if you were to go to OSPI and run a 1250 run report, you would see over 6,500 students. Now, when you start to break that down, you realize that when you're looking at the number of students on an FTE basis that are served in our elementary and secondary schools, that number, excluding New Market Skills Center, excluding the kids that maybe go get post-secondary credit at the community college through Running Start, that number is considerably smaller. And that's a unique feature of Tumwater that's important to keep in mind. That number last year, at the year end, annual average FTE was 5,892.6. We're at about 738 staff, broken down accordingly to certificated at 447 and classified at 290. Those numbers will match the S275 report to the state. And then from a spending and funding standpoint, we're at 75% of our revenue coming from the state, which is fairly typical, and just over 80% of our spending that is compensation related, whether that be salary, benefits, et cetera. Here's what we call that fund summary, and this is a reminder that when we report to the state and we close out a year, it's not all about the general fund. We have other funds. The ASB fund, the debt service fund, the capital projects fund, and the transportation vehicle fund. I've chosen to highlight one piece of data on there, which is the negative 4.5 million. That is the final reported annual operating deficit of the Tumwater School District for fiscal year 2024, meaning that we spent 114.5 million, which is that second row, and we took in revenue $4.5 million. Less than that, $109.9 million. The other funds are operating within a normal range. The only probably noteworthy thing is that, and I think it was mentioned earlier this evening, we'll quickly come to decision time on the future of the Capital Projects Fund, and in particular, the future of the district's capital and technology levy, which is, were it to be renewed, would have to go on the ballot in calendar year 2026. Okay, this represents a distribution of where we get our revenues, and you see that 75% comes from the state, and we took in just short of $109 million. And then on the expenditure side, as we noted earlier, just over 80% of our expenditures come from compensated related items, and it distributes, as you see there, with the largest portion coming from cert salaries. Okay, now we're going to get into some history slides. These are the general fund ending fund balances for the last, what do we got there? Not quite 10 years. You can see it's been a bit of a roller coaster, but most notable here is that the district finished fiscal year 24 at 6.6 million, and then you see that it ended the previous year in excess of 11. That is where that $4.52 million operating deficit number comes from. The next two slides sort of plot from an expenditure standpoint the cost of staffing and payroll. I did this for myself and then thought you all might find it interesting. So this slide is aggregate cost of payroll. The next slide actually breaks down year to year the percentage change of that. So I'll go back first here. You see a couple of trends there, right? You see something happening right around 2018, and you'll remember that was the most of what was happening around the McCleary years, where the legislature stepped up its commitment to educator salaries. So that was a good thing. Then you see a bit of you see the ebb, then you see the flow right around the pandemic. And then more recently, you see some robust growth. And you see that reflecting here in these annual percentages. So the largest blue is in that McCleary year. Then you see some years where during the pandemic, there just was, not just in Tumwater, but pretty much every school district across the state, certain compensation-related costs that didn't materialize at the same rate. You're not hiring the same number of subs, for example. You don't have the same amount of overtime for bus drivers and things of that nature. And so it would be expected to see that orange there in that pandemic year, and then a very quick and robust recovery, shall we say. Okay, the next slides are historical looks at staffing. This will match the S275 reported data, and you'll see for 2025 we were at our high point of 447.5, and it classified a high point of 290.7. I provide the history for reference and for your review. Won't go over every year. So take those in the context of our enrollment. So remember, we started a presentation sort of talking about in Tumwater how important it is to understand the components of enrollment as distinct from just the aggregate number that you're going to look up on the OSPI website. Because there are certain parts of our enrollment that are growing quite robustly. The New Market Skills Center is doing spectacularly from a recruitment standpoint. We also see more of our students availing themselves of the Running Start dual credit opportunities. But in some cases, that is a student-for-student trade-off for attendance in our classes in our elementary and secondary brick and mortar schools here. So you see the orange representing sort of a general downward trajectory, certainly since 2018, but then again after the pandemic. The orange isn't at its lowest point ever, but it is among its lowest points. Okay. This is probably the most important slide that I have to present to you this evening, so if we might just pause and take a moment on this. I've cheated just a bit here in the sense that this presentation is about fiscal year close for last year, and I have updated this information all the way through like 3 days ago. So we just got the county treasurer's report for the month of November. And so what you are seeing here, again, I believe you've all seen this chart before, so I think you understand what it says. But I think there's a number of people watching this evening, so if I could just take a moment.
Please.
Okay. So each of the line graphs that are, for lack of a better term, more slender in thickness, okay, representing the history all the way from 2019 all the way to 2024, represent the trajectory of cash balances in each month through the year. So you have 5 years of history that you're comparing to. And as we've discussed before, and I know that you appreciate, it matters greatly what month you're talking about. October is always higher, April's always higher, and you can consistently see that, okay? 2025 is made, 24-25 school year is made green, I think that's a green, and much more bold so it stands out so that you know it's this year, okay? You can see that, as we talked about at the last board meeting, the September balance was, by a significant margin, the lowest cash balance that we've had in September in any previous year depicted. We were momentarily buoyed by our property tax, as any district would be that has a past levy. But you'll see in November that we see a continuation of the, the deterioration of our cash balances. And so to have a cash balance, a treasurer cash balance of $2.6 million in the Tumwater School District is unprecedented and represents an amount close to $5 million less than when we were where we were in last November. So we are in a fundamentally different place from a cash standpoint. And what Ms. Acker and I and the team have spent a good deal of time doing is then from there, knowing what we know at this point with best information, plotting out how you would think the rest of that green line would portray for the rest of the year. And our position is that we think there's a better chance than not that the district would go cash negative in March of this year. There is the potential for the district to go cash negative in February and June of this year. And some chance, although I would say, we think somewhat unlikely, in January. So you have a resolution that is in draft form in your packet, that is an interfund loan resolution, which is designed to mitigate against those cash poor months, allow the district to meet its financial obligations in those months. And it is essentially a scenario, I wouldn't say it's common, but there are certainly a number of districts across the state that are in a similar situation, so it's not unprecedented. And a situation that I have had to, I've had to employ this strategy in another district before, and I know Ms. Acker has as well. So as we have a separate agenda item on that, I'll move on and we'll be able to come back to that. So in review, what does the fiscal year data for fiscal year 2024 tell us? I think it tells us at least 5 things. First, that the ending fund balance of $6.6 million was a $4.5 million deterioration in 1 year of the general fund balance. That's over 40%. That is quite unusual to have a operating deficit of that percent. Second, that in the last few years, it's certainly unmistakable that we've got staffing and spending increases that are not commensurate with what we're seeing in terms of enrollment. And I think we illustrated that earlier with those slides, which was the point of showing you them. And that in Tumwater in particular, because we are a host district to the Skills Center, it is imperative that consumers of enrollment information in this district don't just pull up the report from OSPI, look at the top line and go, we're doing great, we're going up. Newmarket Skills Center is going up a lot, and that can sort of obfuscate some of the detail that's important to understand the district's financial situation. The fund balances and the underfunds are not troubling to me. There was a brief moment where, for the first time in the history of the Tumwater School District, the ASB fund had more cash than the general fund, which was a first, but not a place we want to be. I need to, I'm trying to, be very clear and transparent about this situation, so I'm just going to say it. This is a heightened state of risk for the general fund. I don't want to be too clever with my language. This is a problem. It is a problem now, and it needs to be addressed with haste. And there really isn't anything about this year in particular that has happened that has made this problem so much more pronounced. The district has been running a sizable operating deficit, and this is the logical conclusion of that. And so some combination of cost reduction and/or revenue enhancement is going to be necessary, and we find ourselves on the precipice of on the cusp of a legislative session in which there are a number of things that the legislature could do to help districts like Tumwater. We're not alone in this, by the way, as I know the board members know. And so that completes my presentation of this data. Happy to take questions on this, but they may also flow into the next agenda item. So, Madam Chair, I don't know how you want to handle that, but.
Do we have any questions about the ending, the 23-24 budget? And how we ended and all of that? Any questions about that?
I have a question. So is this the worst that we've seen for the Tumwater School District?
Depends how you define worse.
Yeah, so we can talk about that.
Deficit.
And I'm trying to be like.
Our fund balance
measured
has
in my
been
language.
lower. Our fund balance has been lower than 6 million, but the deficit is rather large.
Yeah, there's two ways to look at it.
Mm-hmm.
Sort of what Director Beard was sort of alluding to there. In my experience, people fixate on the fund balance at the expense of what is more important, which is your operating deficit.
Mm-hmm.
So you can have money in your savings account, but if you are spending a lot more than you're bringing on an annual basis, you're going to burn through it very quickly. So the operating deficit is the most important metric. And districts with large fund balances, and I came from such a district that went through this, districts with large fund balances make commitments that are structurally outpaced by their revenue, and it's just a matter of time at that point. And so, is it the worst? That's sort of a subjective, but it is the largest operating deficit that we have observed in this recently recorded history. There's only so far I could go back. I didn't go back to the 1990s or anything, so
Any other questions? I have some questions, but it's probably more appropriate for the interfund loan
Okay.
Presentation. So is everyone comfortable with us going on to that topic? All right, let's go.
Okay, so item E on your agenda is the interfund loan. Nice segue from the conversation we just had. I think if you can remember that slide, which is tracking balances by month, a district can still end the year with a positive fund balance, as we project to do, and still have issues with particular months. So make a distinction between cash flow concerns in a particular month versus projected ending fund balance at the end of the year. Those are related but different things. So we believe at this point that we are in need of an interfund loan. So in your packet, there is a memo that provides the basic highlights of what an interfund loan is. It is essentially a cash loan from one fund to another fund, and its purpose is to allow a district to meet its financial obligations in that fund in a particular month. By statute, the resolution must stipulate that the money be repaid to that fund with interest, and the resolution stipulates a specific amount of the fund. And you're sort of in this situation with an interfund loan where you don't want to take out more than you would think is necessary, but you also don't want to come back to the board So you want the amount to be more than you think it needs to be, but not too much more. You know, you're trying to thread that needle a little bit. So the way that it is drafted is that, working with Porter Foster Rorick, using their template, this is provided for your information and discussion this evening, but is not drafted for adoption this evening. It's drafted for adoption in January, and we believe that that would be the earliest we would need it anyway. So in discussion, wanting to give you all due time to consider it and ask your questions. Tonight's for discussion. January would be proposed adoption. It is currently written for $4 million. If we get additional information between now and then that we might be able to bring that number down, we would. But right now, that's what it's drawn to. And I am prepared to answer any questions you may have.
Anyone have questions?
What's the interest rate?
It is whatever that money would have made in the the Thurston County investment pool during the same period.
Which is?
Well, we don't know
Don't know
because
yet.
it'll be for that period, but it's typically, I mean, when I did this in King County, we ended up paying back like 2.5%. It's not huge numbers. I understand that investment earnings are higher now, so it might be a little higher. But it is whatever, you're basically replacing whatever
It would have made.
the fund would have made, yeah. And the county helps you determine that.
Other questions?
I have a question for Mel. So what do you think about taking money out of your area? It won't affect anything? Okay. Okay.
What would happen if, for whatever reason, we didn't pay back the loan?
Well, we're required by law to pay it back, is one thing. You mean if we violated the law? So, I don't want to get too far into this, but people think of the, you can tell me if this is too much information, but people tend to think that these loans are designed to solve your problem in the general fund, and they don't do that. So the budget gap in the general fund will not change. The only thing that changes is the availability of cash in a given month, if that makes sense. So if I could draw a conclusion to be like, let's say in your personal life, you have a paycheck and you have expenses, and you've got a big hole, and your expenses are $5 million in your paycheck. And you come into a certain month where you need cash, and you call your parents and ask for some cash, and they make you pay it back at the end of the month. You still got the same budget gap that you started with, right? They just floated you for a period of time. So the law is very clear, like this money is not used to solve your problem, like solve your budget problem. You still have the same size budget gap at the end of the year. It just floats you cash for the days that you're negative.
We're able to make payroll in those low months.
And we're required by law to pay it back, and we're required by law to pay the commensurate interest from the investment pool.
So what's the term of the loan? Like, is it a,
We stipulate that.
No, we pay it back no later than August 31st,
okay, gotcha.
Yeah,
25.
we pay it back earlier, but we can pay it back no later than.
Other questions about the loan? Ty?
I understand how it works, but some people might not.
Yes, sure.
If we have money, $4 million sitting in our capital fund, why can't we just use that for our general fund?
Because the law
That's a great
stipulates.
question.
Yeah, it's a very good question. So the law stipulates that the revenues to each fund must conform to the allowable expenditures of each of those funds, and those funds have very specific statutory parameters. And there's sort of like a firewall between the funds. So when we collect money, or any district collects money in the capital fund, we are restricted by law to spend them on a finite list of things: building buildings, occasionally technology projects, major renovations, things of that nature. And so you can't, it's not like having a checking and savings account where you can sort of transfer money in between accounts. The law sort of puts a firewall between them and says they have very distinct purposes. And that's what the voters are told, by the way, when they authorize the funding of those funds, that they will not be intermingled.
Thank you.
Excuse me.
Have you had a chance to chat with some of your fellow financial people with other school districts and maybe give us an estimate of how many other school districts are also asking for a similar type resolution and loan?
Sure. Now, just so you know, I can't give you a real number. I'll just give you like conversationally.
Sure.
So I'm not aware, I asked this at our meeting at the ESD, whether there were any in Thurston County. We're not aware of any right now in Thurston County. There are some that could, but we're not aware of any right now. There are definitely, I'm gonna, if you'll allow me a guess, I'm certain there's more than 10. There's probably more in the range of 20 to 30 districts that are either doing, could be more than that, frankly, doing either an interfund loan or taking an advance on their apportionment payment, which is another strategy that certain districts use. But, you know, it's the districts you've been reading about, you know, the Marysvilles, at one point North Shore, Seattle, I think, has a big loan out. So is it unusual? I guess that depends on how you define it. It's certainly not what we want, but we're also not alone. I think as we've been, you know, sort of talking about that, this is more of, there's sort of clearly a statewide thing going on here for school districts.
Yeah, let me just add just a bit, because it was probably a month and a half ago, the state, so OSPI did a presentation to all superintendents specifically on interfund loans. And so there's different versions that you can do, and they walked us through all the different options, so that's school-wide superintendents. In addition, our ESD did a presentation to all ESD 113 regional superintendents, and another presentation was given to all of us as sort of first, second year superintendents in the state. This same conversation occurred with all of them. So this is definitely on the radar, because I went all of last year and didn't hear about this at all. And so this is at least the third time, and we're into the beginning of December, where we're doing this statewide, regionally wide, and locally. So we don't have numbers, but it is on everyone's radar.
Most of the districts, well, if you're on binding conditions, chances are you've probably had a loan. I think there's like 10 districts on binding conditions. You can start there. And then the districts that are sort of on deck in some sort of difficulty are the most likely candidates. So I guess without giving you a specific number, it's certainly not unprecedented. I did it in my previous district. It's not something you want to do, but it's not unprecedented.
So it looks like we have a lot of work for the new legislative rep to do, huh?
Yeah, I mean, if can we talk about that for a second?
Yes.
Is that something, is that out of order, or are you talking about that later?
Okay, yeah, we can talk about that.
Well, I just think it is very important to note that there's, you know, Tumwater is a district that is not allowed to collect its local levy as authorized by the voters, and operates under a different system than the Seattle School District. And this continues to be an inequity in the state and would make a really meaningful difference to the budget situation in Tumwater if we were just simply allowed to collect the levy that the voters authorized in Tumwater. At various points, you know, I went so far as to draft a bill a few years ago and worked with somebody in Kent. It's been sort of kicking around. I don't know if anybody has sponsored that bill, but I'd love to see that bill sponsored and make somebody say no to continuing to treat us differently than King County.
About how much money do we leave on the table that the voters have approved? Do you know that?
Roughly, on a calendar year, give or take $4 million,
Well, there we go. We need that.
which is why I inserted myself in that conversation about the legislative process. I drafted, when I was working in a different district, I drafted a bill and tried to get my superintendent to get, you know, and the bill has been introduced in different legislative sessions, It has had a hearing before, but it's never passed. So you have one district in the state that enjoys a higher cap. And I've never understood any sort of like real justification for treating everybody else differently. I've just never understood that other than political power and dynamics. So that would be my one thing to the legislative rep is that's the single most impactful thing in the Tumwater School District this legislative session.
So you opened the door, so I'm going to ask a question about that then. So are paramount duty and basic education funds technically by law correct or not to be funded with levy funds, right? Like basic education funds, like the statute around levy funds are that this is not supposed to be used to fund basic education.
That's right.
So how would collecting additional levy funds help us with our operating deficit that's primarily driven by our state funds?
Because that's not really how it works in practice for every school district in the state. Basically, most of our large contracts, most of the contracts include compensation that technically falls under the definition of enhancement, but is still a very large operational expense for school districts. I'm not talking about just Tumwater now. It's sort of, and so in practice, a lot of local levy money does subsidize core salary expenses. And so this line that the legislature's has tried to draw to separate out local levy and the subfund and just for enhancements is in all practical purposes not working. We subsidize, most districts subsidize a large portion of the special education program.
I was going to say
With their local
special ed isn't fully funded,
And there's
transportation's not
Nothing
fully
more
funded.
basic ed than our
And-
inclusive ed kids.
And our material supplies and operating costs aren't fully funded, and those are all basic ed things that should be fully funded, and they're not.
Would they, if the levy lid increased, would they pull back on something else though, in terms of like swapping anything?
Are you asking me what I think they would do or should do?
Well, maybe the question is why do we have a lid in the first place?
Yeah, so the reason the lid is as old as, it's been in place for as long as I've been involved in Washington State school finance. It's changed a couple times, and the original concept was of equity. So you go to a state like, let's take New Jersey, for example. In New Jersey, if you live in Princeton, New Jersey, it's a very property wealthy community, there are no lids on what you can raise locally. So you have some districts spending 3-4 times what another, you have Trent, New Jersey, Princeton, New Jersey, they could be spending 3 times as much because they have the ability to raise that with their huge property wealth, right? So Washington State case law says, no, we're not going to, this is an equity-based case law set in Washington. And many of the court cases are about that. So we're going to cap the ability of local school districts to collect more than they should, right? And they had to come up with a definition of what they should be able to collect. And historically, that's changed a number of times, but most recently it's a per pupil number inflated by the Consumer Price Index. Seems a little bit random, but it provides at least some equity, right? The oddness of it is that they'll allow you to go out to the voters, propose a levy, propose what you're going to do to it, get it passed, and then they say, but you can't collect that. But in Seattle, you can. So what districts do is they collect to the rate of the Seattle because they're waiting to be treated equally. And alas, districts are not able to collect that year after year after year. So it seems inequitable. The concept of having a cap seems fair. It seems consistent. But having the cap be applied equally to all districts seems like the way to go. Once you start having tiered caps, it's like, well, on what basis, other than the fact that the Speaker of the House happened to be from that district, what basis, would you have an education to treat these districts differently? So it's time for it to change. It's been a number of years now. I gave it my best shot.
Any other
That was my
questions?
speech.
Yeah.
But it's $4 million, and it matters a lot, so.
I have a question. What are we, I think, as I know we'll take action on this next month, and so maybe we don't have answers now, but I'm really interested on what we're doing to decrease that deficit this year, and what we're going to be doing as we build the budget for next year. And I'm looking at Kevin and Ben and Kira, and so you don't have to answer that tonight, but I will be expecting some sort of answer. I know that emails have gone out, and I know I've heard from teachers that they're feeling this, which means the message is getting out. But $4.5 million is a lot of money to make up.
We have a work session in January, so I think it's January 9th, that I think is scheduled to be specifically a focus on budget. So I think a lot of this information, what you're talking about, we'll be ready to bring to you at that time, or getting closer to that. So we definitely hear your messaging on that.
Okay. Thank you. Anything else? All right. Thank you, Ben. Now we'll have Mel Murray, Director of Facilities, now present on the Black Hills High School Wrestling Barn donation.
Thank you, President Beard and members of the board. This is a kind of a recap of some information that was actually presented 2 years ago. This is a project that started, I think, in spring of 2022. A group of parents decided that their students needed a place to wrestle. Since then, the wrestling program at Black Hills to Modern Middle School has been growing. I believe that as of right now, I have with me Nikki Nelson, the athletic director, and Steve Kruger, the assistant wrestling coach at Black Hills. So there's 61 wrestlers at Black Hills, 58 at Tumwater Middle School, and 94 in a youth club that will feed into those two programs. So the building is 4,400 square feet, and it would be built on the backside of Building B, the classroom building. If you know where the bus loading area is, there's what they call the hoop greenhouse, and then that area where the Spirit Fire Pit is, that pad is designed for future portables. So this would take place of the row of 4 portables. And that's kind of part of the agreement with the wrestling boosters, that if we needed portables, we'd install the first 2 rows first, and then we'd look at this location for, converting into classrooms if we needed to. We think that there's other options within the classroom building that would be more economic and a better solution first, but we always have this option, because that's one of the agreements that if the board ends up accepting the donation, it becomes a Tumwater School District building, and it's subject to, with proper notice that we would need to take it over for another use. The wrestling boosters have formed a legal entity, the Black Hills Wolves Wrestling 501c3, to legally collect and provide money, materials, services, such as Steve, the wrestling coach, is a licensed architect in the state of Washington, so he is providing his services for free to design the building, and he has some engineers doing the same. I just want to let you know that as an architect, it gives me a level of trust knowing another architect is working on this building. Want to be sure that you know that no Tumwater School District funds are being proposed for the construction, and this is important because when you get into donations of buildings and public works, there's some rules you have to follow, and we are meeting all those. One of them is that it's usually, if you're splitting the cost of a building, then you have to look at what the public cost is, and that's you would have to bid that amount out if it was at a certain limit. Since this is a zero cost to the district, it's all public funding, we don't need to worry about bid laws because there's nothing to bid out. The second thing is that anyone working on the project, a contractor, an owner of a company, can donate his labor, his services, his equipment, but he can't compel his employees to do the same. So if a carpenter was working on the building, he would either be paid prevailing wage like any other worker on site, on a construction site on our school projects, or he could be paid his standard wage, or he could volunteer to not be paid. But anything other than the prevailing wage would have to be in writing and would be subject to review. So that's important as well. So The wrestling group covers all the costs associated with the building, construction, permitting, design. There would be some operating costs after it's open, and that would basically basic utilities, electricity, and some garbage service, trash services to remove trash from the building. But the wrestlers as a team are very conscientious and responsible for sanitizing and cleaning their spaces after their use. And the current space is in the building. It's called the mat room. It's right up front. It's about the same size as this building would be. And right now, I know of 4 uses that share it. It's a PE space. It's a wrestling space. It's a cheerleading practice space. It's a dance team practice space. There's also mirrors in there for a dance team. So if you can imagine, wrestling with mirrors in the same space is not very safe. It's also, the wrestlers have to start practice by rolling out the mats and end practice by rolling them up so that the space is ready for its use the next day. By having their own space, the mats would be left out, less damage to rolling them up, rolling them out, and also they could just be left in place. I note here that the construction cost, when it was first presented, was $200,000. I have myself applied just an inflationary factor for the last 2 years of $25,000, so about $225,000 is the estimated value of the donation. There are some permitting requirements that the city has. Basically, there are no fire sprinklers, so it can't be an assembly space, which means no spectators. There's also no restrooms. The team and the club would like to have restrooms in the building. The problem is there's no sewer line behind the building B for them to connect into. So much like the athletic fields, they'll have to use the locker room restrooms or provide their own porta potty outside the facility when it's being used. Competitions would continue to be in the main or the auxiliary gyms. And again, that it's been agreed that if the donation is accepted as a school district facility, the structure may be repurposed for other school-related use as deemed necessary by the board of directors with sufficient prior notice. And this building is supported by the principals, the wrestling team, the wrestling coaches, and the athletic director. And I also previous note that when it was presented to the board in 2022, Tumwater High School athletic director and coaches supported it as well. So as I mentioned, I have Nikki and Steve here for any other questions as needed, and I'll open it up to questions now.
Thank you, Mel. Any questions? Emma?
So because it's going to be a Tumwater School District building, does that mean it's accessible not only to Black Hills, but to Tumwater High School too?
We are treating it the same as the batting cage building that is at Tumwater High School that we do not put out for general facility use because of the donation factor. So the wrestling team, who are the donors, have priority use, the same as the baseball boosters at Tumwater High School have priority use on the facility.
Okay, thank you.
Makes sense? Yes. Good question.
Will they still use the current wrestling facility since they have so many kids?
The idea is no, but again, competitions would take place in the gym. So these are practice mats out here, and the competition mats would be stored in the mat room, but rolled up until they are needed for a competition. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Go to the microphone, please.
Come here, Steve.
Good evening, thanks. The intention would primarily be to use this room. Our program is growing, and as Mel had mentioned, we have a youth program now shared between Tumwater and Black Hills to promote the sport in our district. So I would anticipate, we're splitting practices now between boys and girls, offsetting schedules to use the same room right now.
Mm-hmm.
So I could see a scenario where if all of the activities could balance to use both rooms, but that may be a future use. I just didn't want to prevent us from having that conversation later.
He's reserving the right to use both rooms. Fair.
To work he worked with his athletic director.
Yeah. Thank you, Steve. Any other questions? Emma?
Okay, to go back to what I asked earlier, so the batting cages at Tumwater High School, we were told that they are primary Tumwater High School, that Tumwater High School has the opportunity to have it first. So I'm just making sure that Black Hills will have the opportunity to have it first.
Yes,
Okay,
true.
thank you.
Very true. Thank you.
Mel, is there a MOU for this engagement?
We're using a modified facility use form that has a lot more stipulations on the second page than our standard facility use. That seemed to be something that Superintendent Rarick worked out with the batting cage building at Tumwater High School, and it seems to be flexible enough, yet rigid enough to suit the negotiations between both sides. Does that make sense?
It does. Are we able to see that?
We can provide that, yes.
Thank you.
In its draft form, so yes.
And then I have one more question. At Tumwater, where do the dance team and cheerleaders do their practice?
That I do not know. I know the dance team has a room under the stadium. There is the room at the far, there's 4 classrooms. The room at the far end is a dance room.
Any other questions? All right.
So just a reminder, we will be bringing this back to the January board meeting for action.
So many things happening in January.
I know.
All right. Okay.
Thank
Thanks, Mel.
Is it okay? We'll include the draft agreement in the packet for next month then? Is that fine?
Yep.
Or do you want to see it before then?
What action are they bringing forward, I guess?
To approve the donation.
Yeah, they approve the donation. So the agreement ultimately is an agreement between the district and the board won't approve the agreement, but it'll be, I mean, you certainly can preview it.
Do you want to see the agreement before the board meeting?
Well, yeah, just like we're saying for the MOU or whatever for the facility use agreement, the modified facility use agreement.
Yeah, do you want to just, as part of the packet, we'll include it, is that okay?
Or do you want it sooner? That's his question.
Unless we wanted to make it, let's get it sooner.
Okay, we can get it to you. I mean, I know they were working on it.
So is it, so that's similar to the baseball, the batting cages?
It'll be similar, yeah. I think we're trying to make sure that we've met the needs of kind of the previous agreement. So I know Mel and that team were working on something specifically for that.
Yes, okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. All right, now moving on to action items. Megan Dawson will present a second reading on policy 3432 emergencies.
Yes, thank you. So first reading was in November, and this is our second reading. WASDA recommended this policy update because they noticed that there were inconsistencies in how schools were approaching drills, and in some cases, drills were leading to confusion for staff and students, and also differing levels of preparedness. So with this bill, districts are now mandated to implement consistent tools that prioritize safety without causing unnecessary psychological stress for students when they're performing drills.
That's great. So we saw this last month. Does anyone have any questions for Megan? Would anyone like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion that we approve the policy.
Second?
Okay, there's been a motion and it's been seconded to approve policy 3432 emergencies. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 All those opposed, say nay. All right, 3432 is approved as presented. Now we'll move on to the superintendent's report.
All right. Appreciate all your patience tonight. So I'm going to go the right direction here. So just a couple quick updates before we get started, just kind of with some of my official report. There was an elementary choir festival. This was held at Tumwater High School, and so packed house of our elementary schools in choir, and this is a picture of them all performing at the end. So again, I think on building some support and stuff for our choir and choir program, so they were super excited to be there. And again, it was a packed house at Tumwater High School. Little Rock Elementary had their Winterfest, and so this is their annual 76th annual holiday bazaar. So if you had a chance to go, that was last Saturday. So they had that, and again, kind of throughout the school, lots of activities. Kind of initial report I heard from Little Rock was that they raised over $25,000 just on this event. So very successful. We might be employing that as a budget strategy here in the future. So just add that to the list.
So that's the plan. Okay.
Yeah, that'll be the
Good to
plan.
know.
We're just going to start doing bazaars every month. Just as if you haven't had this on your calendar, tomorrow night is Michael T. Simmons, their Lane of Lights. And so I just wanted to remind everyone, I believe, and it's like if it says this, the first half hour of this, I think so 6 to 6:30, you can walk the Lane of Lights. So if you want to come by and walk through, so they kind of do walking, and then from 6:30 to 8 is driving. So come by, and they're excited to have that at one of those annual events at Michael T. Simmons. We have this meeting here in December, and just kind of, because it's early in the month, I feel like it's just appropriate that we talk about December 15th, and it is Bill of Rights Day. And pass down your Bill of Rights. So I think last year I brought them, and then I didn't have enough for the board, and so everyone gets their own Bill of Rights, and our students too. So Bill of Rights is observed annually on December 15th. It honors our first 10 amendments to the United States Constitution. These amendments are collectively known as the Bill of Rights, and they are created to ensure and protect the fundamental rights and freedoms of all Americans. Among its guarantees are freedom of speech, religion, and the press, as well as the right to protest, bear arms, and be safeguarded against unreasonable search and seizure. The Bill of Rights also ensures equal protection under the law and fair judicial proceedings. Originally drafted on September 25th, 1789, the Bill of Rights was ratified on December 15th, 1791. And to commemorate this pivotal moment in American history, President Franklin D. Roosevelt established Bill of Rights Day in 1941. So we're here, and there was one in his inaugural address for the occasion. President Roosevelt remarked, "No date in the long history of freedom means more to liberty-loving men in all liberty-loving countries than the 15th day of December, 1791. So each year, Bill of Rights Day serves as an opportunity for Americans to reflect on the enduring significance of these amendments in safeguarding liberty and justice. It's time to celebrate the privilege that formed the cornerstone of our democracy and encourage civic engagement and education about our constitutional rights. This is one of those areas that should be taught in our schools, and so they should be bringing this up as we get to the end of December. One event that came about just recently, this was in November, our jazz bands from around the area participated in the 22nd annual Capital City Jazz Band Festival. It is also called the Cool Jazz Clean Water event, sponsored by Rotary Clubs of Thurston County. Both of our high schools performed, as well as Tumwater Middle School. So it's a picture of them. They were really performed amazing. They were awesome if you had a chance. I happened to be around in Thanksgiving, and there were so many fun things going on just right before break. This happens to be, I don't know if you've met, this is Tony Harris, Tumwater Middle School. Tony's a 7th grade science medical detectives robotics teacher, Tumwater Middle School. He's one of our nationally board certified teachers, leads STEM, sustainability, technology. They were celebrating a bunch of activities that kids were going to a bunch of different stations, and Tony was definitely right there in the spirit of things. So I just wanted to share a little bit of that. I'll pass this down as I kind of just talk just briefly about this. I want to just thank Ann Kelleher. She's a former Tumwater Middle School teacher and librarian, and she has preserved the legacy of the Homesteaders program through this book that she has created, and it was presented to the district recently. And although the program is no longer active, it holds a special place in the hearts of many former students who will fondly recall their experience. Ann was joined by Sandy Gray, a former school board member and member of the Tumwater Historical Association, as they presented the book to Becky. The book is proudly displayed here at the district office, and I brought it here today so you can see it. So want to just give a big thank you to Ann for her support and kind of capturing this kind of history of Tumwater. I happen to be at Little Rock on a day, and we talk a little bit about student behavior. This group is called the Celebration Squad. So this is a group of 5th grade leaders at Little Rock Elementary, and they're called the Celebration Squad. And so they go around to classrooms and kind of on a monthly basis honoring and celebrating students and classes who are basically doing the kind of expectations. And I think this particular time, they were demonstrating, what was the focus? Respectful, so it's a safe, respectful, responsible, following our school rules. They were doing one of those. I think it was respect, and they were giving examples of how students were being respectful, engaging. I happened to be with them in a kindergarten class, and they were engaging with our kindergartners around what's respectful behavior look like in the hallway, what's it look like when you're in the cafeteria, and so they were engaging in that and got awards for outstanding recognition. So I thought capture them, and they were a fun group to walk around the school with. One of the things that we started, and we can never celebrate it kind of enough, and so one of the things that we are doing is beginning to do Employees of the Month, both on the certificated and classified side. So we're excited to celebrate our first awardees in this, and I just want to these are recognition and honors that go to our employees who go above and beyond. They support our students, colleagues, and our school community. Our certified staff are recognized for exceptional dedication to student learning, creative inclusive classrooms, and contributing to school-wide initiatives. Our classified staff are celebrated for their excellence in supporting school operations, fostering a welcoming environment, and demonstrating teamwork and reliability. We've had many, many nominations, and this was in November, and we have another big group for December. Our classified employee of the month was Lisa Thomas. Lisa is a paraprofessional at Tumwater Hill Elementary, numerous nominations, and is a vital member of that Tumwater Hill team. Our first certified employee of the month is Erin Novak. Erin is the Spanish enrichment teacher at East Olympia Elementary. Erin started the Spanish program at East Olympia in 2018 and has coordinated their annual fiesta at the end of each school year. Her nomination stated it perfectly, and I thought it was just appropriate for tonight's meeting. She is a gift. And so congratulations to Lisa and Erin. I look forward to recognizing more of our outstanding staff in the months to come. So that is all I have tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. Now we'll move on to board member reports. It's legislative update and board goals update. I don't have much of a legislative update other than the session starts the second Monday of January. Oh yay, I was wondering, I didn't see anything in the packet.
Just finished it.
Awesome, yay. So we have, at our last meeting, we talked about what our agenda, our legislative agenda would be as a district. And we have a draft here. And so you'll see on the backside, there's lift the levy lid that Ben was talking about. And so would like your feedback on what our priorities should be.
Spell it out.
Thoughts? So we have SPED, I'll read this since it wasn't in the packet. SPED funding shortfall impacts that our total unfunded costs are $1.4 million. Our material supplies and operating costs outpace inflation. And the total increase in material supplies and operating costs is 144% over 5 years. Geez, our insurance costs have increased from 2017-18 over $1 million to this year. Transportation costs, our unfunded costs are $1.2 million. Living the levy lid would, to the amount that we are allowed to collect, would give us $4 million. And then student behavior supports, usually when we hear when we hear from especially our elementary schools about the behavioral needs, I don't think that's any different than at a middle and high schools, but our students need supports in terms of social, emotional, and behavior support. So thoughts, questions on what our priorities would be when we go to meet with legislators? Students, do you have any thoughts?
Sure, I have some thoughts. I'd like to see the transportation addressed as well as the SPED and the operating costs. Those seem like quantifiable costs that we can easily demonstrate have increased over time. You can directly relate them to services, and I think those have the highest success rate of getting any type of response. While I support the student behaviors even more, that's really hard to quantify data, but we can try for that one too.
Those three that you identified are identified by the the School Directors Association, the Principal Association, our School Administrators Association. Those are the three priorities that they've identified as well. Anyone? Cody?
The special education funding shortfall impacting students is very, resonates with me very well, because every student or child deserves an equal opportunity regardless of, it's really not the student's fault, it's the state's fault. So I think this is a great initiative to take.
Thank you. Any other thoughts?
It looks good.
All right. Okay, thank you. Director Kaikkonen, do you like to talk about board goal updates?
Okay, so I have agreed to continue on working on actually one of our goals, which is holding ourselves accountable to the goals that we had set out. And so I've, started to do that, and I'll keep my little running matrix in terms of the kinds of activities that we are working through. So, for example, one of them was, continuing with our professional development. So a group of us were able to attend the WASDA conference and do a couple of trainings. I was able to do one of my cultural proficiency ones. I know Ty was able to do the new member board boot camp, and so things like that. But then, as we continue to work towards the couple of goals that are really focused on student learning and the strategic plan, because those are all kind of, looped together. I think one of the things I want to make sure to remind everyone about is these aren't just goals, but they're actually written into policy. So our state assessments they're meaningful in a couple of different ways. I mean, they are linked directly to graduation requirements. They're linked to pathways. There's a reason that they're written into policy, and we didn't write them into policy. They're there. The other thing that we'd spent a lot of time, as a board, doing the board annual self-assessment and talking about what it means to be an effective board and to have governance and to set very high standards for learning. And so it's not just about the end goal. It's not just about the, once we get to 90% for all, it's really about the process that it takes, that inquiry in terms of understanding. And that's why we look at data. That's why we break things down and then start thinking about all of those different strategies. And so with the strategic planning discussion, I do think it's going to be very critically important that we're all on the same page about what our student learning goals are, because I saw that written in there. That's a significant part of that discussion. So if we find ourselves with maybe different perspectives about that, we might find ourselves in conflict with our own policies that we've already set as far as our expectations of student learning. So that's my spiel. For now, if anyone has any other things, thoughts or ideas.
I think this is what I always think about too. We happen to have Zach in front of us and asking him about the math, the SBA, but it's not just Zach's job to make sure those kids pass the 10th grade math SBA. It's something our whole system needs to focus on. Math is terrible. Our math scores are terrible, and I believe that we can do a better job helping students see math as something that they all can accomplish and that they all can do, like everyone knows and believes that they can read. I really need us to create a culture in our district that everyone knows and believes that they can do math, because they can. And it's not just here in Tumwater, it's a societal belief that some people are good at math and some people are not, and that is just not true. And so I don't want kids to learn that in elementary school, that then we look to Zach to fix it. Like, that is not something that I want Dave or Zach to have to figure out. That's a whole system that I would like us to look at. So that leads to graduation rate, that leads to what they're going to do after they leave us. Math is a big component of that. So as part of these conversations, I just want us to talk about the whole system and not just that endpoint like Darby is talking about. Like, it's not just about that graduation rate, it's the whole system. I love talking about that. Anyway, thank you. Anyone else? All right, so now we'll go to board comments. You know I'm terrible at keeping track, so I will have my timer on. Everyone gets 2 minutes to speak. And are there any volunteers? Go ahead, Cody.
As you know, we recently switched to the new School Links program for high school and beyond.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, on day one, a progress halting issue that has yet to be resolved was discovered, and it is the majority of the mandatory lessons in the School Links program require students to watch a video to complete the lesson. However, every video is blocked, and there's no way to progress past that point, resulting in many students and myself being unable to complete the lessons for reasons outside of our control, and in resulting from that, all of us are behind past, pretty much just caught up to October, so we're behind in November as well. So it feels like there was little thought put into actually testing the program before they released it maybe. But yeah, it's not working.
Thank you, Cody. I didn't know that. Anyone else would like, Emma, did you want to go?
So it was brought up to my attention that the AP government books are out of date, 2012. Mm-hmm. I think that government books, history books, have to be up to date because that's a thing that's changing all the time, and the stuff could be wrong. The stuff changes all the time, and that's a big thing. That's over 10 years old. Another thing, again, I'm going to mention it, is the pack time. I know Tumwater High School has tea time. That is the same thing as pack time at our school, and it got taken away. I know it was an admin decision, but a lot of kids are failing right now. And that time was very crucial for those kids. And now there's a lot of kids that are needing the help. And Saturday Academy, it's great, but it's not a solution. Kids can't come on Saturday, don't have rides, it's not a solution.
Thank you, Emma. Josh, would you like to go? Do you have any comments? Sure. Okay. You don't. Oh, you get a choice? Okay, so I'm sorry to interrupt this whole thing, but Megan, are you able to speak to what Cody just talked about? Can you come to the microphone? And spoiler alert, I'm going to ask you about what Emma talked about too, so about the pack time. So,
yeah.
Okay.
So it's the Tumwater School District decided to pilot the School Links platform, and I have a feeling that the pilot wasn't ready, and any school district who decided to pilot it is feeling the same, seeing the same outcomes. And I have an email going into Marcy Proctor, she was the person who came and presented about School Links, that we're assuming that like if students can't work on it, we're also not going to require that portion of it. So I appreciate you being platform testers. I apologize that it has been stressful. And we will loop back to our folks on the piloting side to be sure that we're delivering a product to you that you can actually move forward in.
So I know Cody chose those words, so it's not like our internet is blocking that video, it's just that video is not ready from school links.
It's possible that our firewall
Yeah.
is blocking the video.
Mhm.
And it's also possible that School Links is partnering with OSPI, and as they're trying to roll it out to 260 school districts, I don't know how many are piloting, that it crashed.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So then is there a communication that can go out to our high school teachers? Because I would have hoped that someone would have told Cody it's
Definitely.
okay. So it sounds like maybe there's some miscommunication with our teachers.
Yeah,
Okay.
definitely we'll send out a communications to families and students.
Uh-huh. Yeah. So it sounds like Megan's going to take care of that. Thank you. And then the PAC time, Emma has brought that up before, and I know that that's a building decision, but has there been a conversation? I don't know if that happens with you or if that happens with Kevin, like the conversation. I also understand having a daughter that went to Black Hills. I understand what happens during PAC time, and it was really tough to count those as instructional minutes because people were not. Emma, it sounds like, would use it, but there were a lot of students who would not. So what is the balance of, how are they balancing that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that would be a great loop back to the two principals.
Mm-hmm.
I'm guessing that it was canceled at the high school level, but not the middle school level,
Mm-hmm.
and that there's pros and cons to that. What do you call it at your school? PAC time, and what do they call it at Tumwater? T-Bird time. That some students enjoy it, do all their homework, focus, get everything done because they have jobs and sports and they don't want to take homework home. And other students don't use the time. And so building principals have to weigh the pros and cons of that. And we can certainly take that back to building principals to say there are teachers or there are students who rely on that time.
Thanks. This will be part of my 2 minutes since I've talked so much. Lastly, what is the feedback loop when our students are saying stuff here? What's our feedback loop to the buildings? So most of the things they bring to us, or they say to us, are things that the building principals need to hear or take care of.
And I've talked to our students since they can certainly bring any of the issues that they want to bring. What I have requested is that they either reach out to me directly, so kind of in writing, right? That if they want to articulate some concerns, and then I'll share that with our staff and we'll get back to them. But this is also, we're not prepared to talk about things that aren't on the agenda tonight. And so this is, in my opinion, this is not necessarily, you certainly can weigh out this is not the forum to kind of get into a discussion about these issues. Anything that we talk here, I take notes and Megan does, and they're here, and we round back to our stuff.
And that's what I was asking was,
Yeah.
I'm sorry to put you on the spot about the school links thing.
It's fine.
But I figured you had some sort of answer for it.
Yeah.
To give Cody some reassurance.
Yeah, we'll follow up with that.
But I'm wondering about the feedback loop,
I've reached out to them when they bring
Okay.
up things, so I reach out back to them.
Okay, great, thank you. All right, my 2 minutes are over. So, anyone else? I'm gonna call on people. Casey.
All right, good. I was just about ready to volunteer.
Oh, well, there you go.
No, don't have much. I just wanted to acknowledge some of the events that Kevin showed. I was at a couple of those. It was pretty cool. It was great to see. I also want to recognize and acknowledge our transportation folks who we haven't heard from in a while, but we still appreciate them hitting their milestones of not missing and canceling routes, which is great. I want to make sure they keep that up, and I know they will. So, no, and that's all I had.
Thank you. Jill?
Yeah, so first off, I want to thank our staff, both at the budget level and the assistant superintendent for having us update our policies, and our principal. Thank you very much for all your hard work. I do want to note that at this point, as a school board member, one of our major responsibilities is a good budget. Okay, and since my background is finance, it is worrisome for me because I always want to follow through on my responsibilities. And I know we're in good hands, and a good part of our situation is just the times that we're in. There's always an important need for good information. Speaking of numbers, good math, and I think we're in really good hands in that regard. And I will take my new position very seriously in being a liaison with our district, with our legislators, okay, and seeing what we can do to make it a little easier for us all to have a good budget that is not stressful or dismal.
Thank you, Jill. Ty.
Zach, just wanted to say thank you for presenting today. Great job. I also took part in the WASDA conference a couple weeks ago. I did the new board member boot camp, which I think was a lot of information and a lot of sitting around, but good information. I think it should be required for all new members, just to get inundated with all the information about what our role is, what our job is. So many little things that I picked up on that I had really no idea about. I also thought a lot of the breakout sessions were really interesting. So look forward to maybe not doing the boot camp next year, but some of the other breakout sessions. So thank you.
Thank you. Darby?
So just a couple of shout outs from some district events. So I had the opportunity to go to Peter G and work in the kitchen for a little bit at their event. Wow, what a shout out to kitchen staff. I can't believe they do that every day on a regular basis. It was really fun and amazing to see the inner workings of an elementary school. So that was great. Congratulations to Tumwater football, their second place. My son plays, and so I was up there. Probably wouldn't have been otherwise, and so that's always cool. However, I'm not a fan of Seattle. I'm not a fan of the stadium, so that part was not great. But congratulations to them for an amazing season. And then finally, I was able to get out to the Black Hills band concert last night. Some amazing holiday tunes, and wow, again, what an incredible program that we have in our district. So I will I've been to a lot of high school events, having kids play sports, that helps quite a bit, but in the kind of the next semester or whatnot, I'm going to actually try to see if I can get out to more of the elementary schools and go back to the middle schools a little bit as well. So that's what I got.
Great, thank you. So with no further business coming before the board, the regular meeting is adjourned at 8:28 p.m. Gosh, why? My first one, like it goes.